start the call to order with the roll call, please.
Okay. Darren Tedford,
Here.
Devin Reese, Alexis Hill,
Here.
Ed Lawson,
Here.
Bill Thomas,
Here.
Hillary Sheevy should be joining us shortly, Mary Luz Garcia,
Here.
Adam Spear.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Adam, will you lead us? The flag is in the corner there.
To the
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, let's move into public comment. First up is Amanda Nelson, followed by Donna Klontz. How are you this morning, Donna? Good.
My name is Amanda Nelson. So I'm here today to discuss the fares on the bus. I'm a transit operator. I drive with Keolis. I've been here for quite a few years. And, I see other agencies across the country, they're converting to a no-fare system. And, I see it every day with the cost of living, and people are struggling. They're struggling to feed their families, their children. The children now are required to walk up to 2.25 miles to school. They don't have a school bus. We have a lot of students that get on our bus, and their parents sometimes they're scraping together change from the bottom of their couch to get on the bus, or the single mom who can't afford her bus fare, and they're struggling. And our fare policy is to ask once and let it go, so we can let them ride. But I think that a lot of times people are very embarrassed, or they're putting their pennies in, and it makes our routes late. I think if we had moved to a no fare policy, that we could keep our buses a little more on time, more ridership, possibly people would put their car keys down and get on the bus and help with emissions if it was free to ride. So, that's what I was here to discuss. I get students, middle school, elementary school, high school, who need to ride the bus, and they maybe don't have bus fare. Honestly, I let them go because they're kids, but I think that if we move to a no-fare policy, it would be beneficial for the entire community with emissions and, helping the community, helping the people who maybe need that $3 to help them. It's, $90 a month to get a monthly pass, and that's a lot, especially when you can't afford it. That's a ton. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Donna Klontz.
Morning, Commissioners. My name's Donna Klontz. I'm a senior resident here in Washoe County, and I represent a large group of folks that have been working on an age-friendly program here in our area for the past 5 years, which includes 3 major areas that we work on. Number 1 is affordable transportation. Affordable housing is the second one, and the third one is getting information out to our senior community on what's available for them, for services, for resources, for things that they can do to make their lives a lot better. That's the age-friendly goal. And so I wanted to give you a copy today and give you more than one. Please take more than one if you can, of our latest Elder Services Resource Guide. It's a small one. It fits in pockets and purses. It includes the RTC transportation information, as well as several other Access to Healthcare and Neighbor Network that provide transportation for our senior community and for others that may need it. We also have caregiving, recreation, general information, healthcare, legal, housing, social services, recreation, and most basic things that a lot of people don't realize exist out there. We've made it simple. It's just got a phone number or a website for folks that many of our seniors, about 40% we think, don't use the internet or don't have smartphones, so they need that phone number so that they can get access. So we printed 20,000 of these new resource brochures with some of the grant money that we received through the food bank and Truckee Meadows Tomorrow. And so they're out and about. If you need some more for your constituency, we're trying to get them all over the county. I'll leave a stack with our TC staff so that you can put them in your racks and get them to maybe to the bus stations so that folks that are there can get access to information. I really appreciate what the prior speaker said about the costs of fares. I can just imagine what it is for the kids and for families that are struggling. And so coming up with a way to make that work so that folks who need to ride the bus because they don't have a school bus, for instance, or don't live in an area that is easy as seniors and those who don't drive, you've worked a lot to make those kinds of things happen with the half fares for the kids and for the seniors, and that's great. But if we come up with some other ways in these economic hard times, that would be absolutely wonderful. We totally support that for the Age-Friendly Group. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
All right, anyone else? I have no more comment. Anyone else in the public wishing to speak at this time? All right, I'll bring it back to the
Mr.
dais
Chair.
and we'll move on to
Mr. Chair,
approval.
sorry. Mr.
Did you
Chair.
have something, Alexis? Oh, sorry. The voice is
I
coming
just wanted to say, we received 4 email comments which were delivered to the commissioners last night, and they will be reflected in the meeting minutes for this board.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking for an approval of the agenda. Anybody have an agenda item they want to pull? If not, we're looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
Got a motion by Commissioner Reese,
Second.
second by Ms. Garcia. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, consent items. Item 4, anyone wishing to pull a consent item? If not, I'm looking for a motion. Move to approve by Mayor Sheevy,
Second.
second by Vice Mayor. I just gave you a promotion.
I don't want it.
Okay. By Commissioner Reese. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Number 5, public hearing. Approved resolution adopting the federal fiscal years 2023 through 27 Regional Transportation Improvement Program, our RTIP.
Morning. Thank you, Chair Lawson, members of the commission. As Chair Lawson indicated, this motion is before you to approve our update to our Regional Transportation Improvement Program. And just kind of as a reminder, we like to show this graphic of, where this particular action fits within our process overall. So again, as a reminder, the RTIP is a required federal document. It's a 5-year look at all of our program projects, anything showing federal funding as well as projects of regional significance within Washoe County must be shown in this document. This is something that all the MPOs in the state have, and they are adopted by right into the ESTIP, which is the statewide transportation improvement program. So that said, this includes projects not only that RTC is the lead on, but also NDOT and the local jurisdictions as well. So our current RTIP covers the federal fiscal years of 2021 to 2025, and so we will be basically shifting this up 2 years, so it will cover 23 to 27. We are required to do this every 4 years. However, we choose to adopt an update every 2 years. It really helps us kind of streamline the process. To be honest, it's less of a lift, but also keeps it more relevant to the public. And really that's the intent and purpose of this document is kind of transparency of the public to see how that public funding is being invested. As a part of this action, we did not need to do what's called a transportation conformity analysis. So this is really looking at air quality impacts. There are no changes to projects that involve capacity. So all the capacity projects have already been vetted through that air quality analysis process. So there's no new air quality projects. We did hold a public comment period starting July 21st through August 10th. advertised in all of our media outlets, social media, the RGJ, Sparks Tribune, I believe Spanish-speaking newspapers, and per our public participation plan. We did present this to both the Technical Advisory Committee and the Citizens Multimodal Advisory Committee, and they both recommended approval. And so kind of culminating here today with the public hearing. We did receive 2 comments, one from Washoe County Health District, the Air Quality Management Division, and as well as one from a resident. They were largely in support of the projects and programs that are being proposed in this updated RTIP. And as Michelle indicated, we have those as part of the record, so hopefully you should have all received those. Let's see. So again, this is really just taking our universe of projects. I believe there's just shy of 90 in there, and kind of providing any adjustments that we need to. For some projects, it comes down to phasing. There's not really any scope adjustments, any cost adjustments, looking at funding sources. Like, for example, we've gotten some grant funding that's replaced some maybe formula funds or local funds that we were anticipating using, and kind of just the timing. It will continue ongoing programs in our existing RTIP. Again, just as a reminder, those are like our pavement preservation program, transit operations, our traffic management program, trip reduction, which is largely focused on van pool, and the Safe Routes to School program. It does advance a few new projects that are in the next 5-year timeframe in the RTP, the Regional Transportation Plan. So I've listed those out as well. I-80 bridge replacements, which is being conducted by NDOT, Pyramid Way, Sparks Boulevard improvements, Buck Drive circulation, military road safety improvements, and then also accounting for acquisition of hydrogen buses and installation of infrastructure to support those buses. So it also includes new projects that have been recently awarded. I believe is the last board meeting where this body approved the Transportation Alternatives Awards, so those are included as well. And just a few notable projects wanted to kind of call out. So Sparks Boulevard Phase 2, the Plumas Street sidewalk improvement, which is being implemented by City of Rito. This was one of those that was awarded a Transportation Alternatives grant. Looking at US 395 in both Phase 1 and Phase 2, again, incorporating that maker grant that was received. And also the Micromobility Network, looking at to include updates to those. We're pending some public input as well as input from like Reno City Council on those. And we do kind of anticipate coming back in a few months after we've got additional information to amend it. But as for now, those projects are in there and identified. I also wanted to highlight a few bridge projects, Keystone Avenue, Sierra Street Bridge, and Arlington Avenue bridges. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Question from the commission? Yes.
Thank you for the excellent presentation. Let me maybe just pick on one item that you've identified, and not pick on, but pick it out. If you go back to your slide that was earlier that identified the military roadway improvements. Yeah, there you are. So in this section, you have identified what I think are some very important projects in the next 5 years of the RTP. And one that really has recently been brought to my attention is on Military Road. And so I want to understand the improvements in that part of the city, in part because what we hear from constituents, and certainly one of my colleagues on the city council is rightly concerned with the North Valleys, right? And we have, I think, spent a considerable amount of funds. Both the state and RTC have considerably sought to improve the traffic patterns in the North Valleys. So I'm always going to be pushing at this dais to understand specifically what's going on in the North Valleys. Madam Mayor and I had a question about this as well. tell me specifically about military and what you anticipate happening there.
Yeah, so it is safety and capacity improvements, as I understand. And again, transportation conformity or quality analysis wasn't required because it's been done for the RTP as a whole. I see Jeff Wilbricht up here is probably more familiar with the project details, so.
Yeah, good morning, councils. My name is Jeff Wilbricht. I'm an engineering manager at RTC, and to specifically address the military road project. So that project is looking at, as Dan was saying, safety and capacity of military road from Lemon Drive all the way up to Echo. Lear Boulevard's kind of an intermediary component of that corridor that we're going to be, performing intersection control evaluations and lots of stuff like that. So we're just in the beginning stages of that project where we're doing all of our due diligence. So we're gathering as much data and input that we can to then understand all the needs, safety concerns, capacity needs, and then advance that to a rough, 10 to 30% design in which we would be starting an outreach process to really outwardly communicate all those findings and then receive input from the community and then advance that process forward towards construction. So.
Well, that's very impressive because I think ultimately that is what we want on all of our projects. I suppose my question, which is in response to your comments, is one of the things that's very sad and tragic is when we have members of our community who are killed on our roadways. And this creates moments where we as human beings have to pause and reflect on the ways in which we have created cities and roadways that are not functioning. And so I know, I'll give you an example. Madam Mayor was able to, some years ago now, fix a very specific point in time up near the Bonanza Casino, and it took a lot of doing. And so now when I look at a place like Military Road, where I know we have had some fatalities, we've had some pedestrian injuries, I need to make certain that we are advancing the goals of this community to keep people safe. And so if those are projects that have to be placed in line before other projects, we need to know your opinion on that. And I assume that therefore the data that you are collecting will drive that conversation. All of us want data because data helps us to measure both the necessity of the project and its effective outcome. So thank you for the information about it. I think this is one of those things that I will request from Mr. Thomas to have a bit more detail provided for us. And also perhaps at some point in time there can be a presentation made back in the city of Reno, because I don't want to take up my colleagues' time here today, about the very specific and unique needs of the North Valleys and the ways in which we can positively impact them through the work that we do both with our partners at the state level and here in this building.
Okay, anyone else? Go ahead.
So what is the process exactly? In which you prioritize, there you go, all right. In which we prioritize, exactly does that work? I think that's kind of more how Vice Mayor Reese was sort of getting to the question where you see, something where you might have high rates of pedestrian fatalities. So like what goes into the recipe of deciding what projects get taken care of?
Sure, that's a great question, and I want to kind of bring the focus back to this graphic. So when we do that long-range plan update, we're really taking a 20-year look out, identifying needs, throughout the whole region. Obviously, some projects are kind of further along. We're required to update this every 4 years. So we have some that kind of naturally migrate, from the outer years closer to in when we get more information gathering. A lot of what goes into RTP is informed by specific corridor studies that we might do. So when we hear about safety needs, such as Commissioner Reese was talking about, those kind of elevate and rise to the top, kind of the universe of projects, we funnel through a prioritization process, try to be very data-driven about that, but understand that there might be other desires or needs kind of outside just that data-driven process. So we really use that as kind of the information gathering, and then, working with our stakeholders, such as the staff at the local jurisdictions, getting their input and the public input to kind of add an additional layer of that prioritization.
So can you tell me where pedestrian fatalities fit into that?
Sure.
How
So
much does that become a priority? Like, one is like, obviously maybe safety and infrastructure. And then, I don't know what that looks like. Maybe you can give us an idea.
yeah, without getting too in the weeds, this current regional transportation plan looked at a variety of factors. Safety was actually our highest weighted factor, and that we kind of ran that screening process. And so we applied a score, like a composite score, to that based on, particularly for safety analysis, we look at crash frequency, rate, and severity, with severity kind of being the heaviest weighted. And that really, we applied that to all our projects, and that was a big driver in how they were ranked and prioritized. Now, as we're getting ready to do an update to the RTP in the coming months here, one of the things we want to do as an agency is kind of reevaluate that process to see if, if there is room for improvement, if there's things we can refine for this kind of next round of projects as we prioritize going forward.
Right, thank you so much. Just curious, is that the same, do you use sort of the same recipe at NDOT?
We do.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I saw on the list a few projects I was just hoping to get some specifics on because Mayor Sheevy was asking for an update on Truckee River improvements by the RTC, which we'll talk about later in the agenda. But I see we have the Truckee River shared use path on the list as well as Broadhead Park. Can you just describe what those are going to be?
Sure. So the Truckee River Shared Use Path is in relation to that segment that's by the Reno Sparks Indian Colony.
Okay.
And so we as staff, particularly Jeff, I'm glad he's up here, has been working really closely with the Indian Colony to advance that project. That really addresses kind of just that one segment there by their health center.
Okay.
And then the Broadhead Park was one of the recently awarded transportation alternative grants that we
That's
had.
what we awarded.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
that really is focused on that specific, I guess, trailhead access at that point.
Okay. Great. And then I have two more. Safe routes to schools. Do you have any specific schools and those projects or that you can highlight for us?
So we really program that funding to kind of support those safe routes to school coordinator positions.
Oh,
So we
got
do
it.
work with them, but they kind of take the lead on, I guess, doing an assessment where the greatest needs are and identifying some of the solutions.
Okay, great. And then RTC Park and Ride, that program.
Yeah, sorry, I missed that one. But we are looking to expand our park and rides primarily for like our van pool program as we see that continue to grow.
What program? I'm sorry, what program?
Van pool?
Vanpool, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Trying to create those formal or informal meeting spaces where people can kind of gather and then obviously all pile into one van and to a common destination. So we kind of through our development review process as well, if there are logical, potentials for some of those, we'll kind of call that out and address it. So I think we're going to try to vet this a little more with some of our other efforts, though.
Okay.
Yeah, with right now we're doing not to get off topic, but a Virginia Street transit-oriented development study. So we're looking at potential opportunities there. Also, we'll be looking at kind of tangentially, we'll be having an upcoming freight study, which was just approved on the consent agenda. So looking at actually truck parking as well. So kind of different modes, but still very important.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate it.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. This is a public hearing, so we'll open it up to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais, and I'm looking for a motion.
All motion?
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, move 6.1, discussion items. Discuss paving and lighting on the Truckee River path as requested by Mayor Sheevy and provide input and direction to the executive director. Who's going to present this one?
I don't know. Go ahead. Yay, let's go.
A little bit of a new process for us. So I had kind of put these on the agenda in as much detail as I could get away with and keep Adam comfortable because it is listed as an action item. I think I might know what this is, but I think perhaps it would be best to start with you, Mayor Sheevy,
Yeah.
so
All
I
right.
don't miss the target.
Okay, no.
Why you wanted to have this on here.
Well, I mean, obviously, we've been talking about this for a long time, but I really think it's time that we particularly focus on the river on many aspects. I don't just think it's RTC. I think it's all of the jurisdictions coming together and making sure it's sustainable. But I do think the path can provide ways, especially for micromobility and just walking, running, and being able to invest in it, whether it's lighting or paving. What does that look like? I mean, obviously, the river is incredibly large, but I also wanted to gauge what this body, how much interest that you have, so that we're all doing it together, because I don't want it to be like, hey, here's Reno, and then we get into Sparks, and it's like you can clearly tell, that it's not connecting. But I just feel that RTC plays a really big role on that connectivity path, and I really think that if we start to design it in the way that I think that it should be preserved and designed, that people will start to see a way in which they can use it for, I mean, even going back and forth to work. So just more options like that. But it's too much of a rare asset not to use it to its best ability is kind of what I'm thinking. But I think now more than ever, this is the time to push. It's 80% of our drinking water. And, people really want to recreate there. But I have people who are like, I want to ride my bike to work. So I think this would be a great regional cooperation type of project. But I thought it should start here. What's the interest of this body? To see what, like, the vision of, we've talked about it, but we haven't talked, how long should this go? What would that cost? What would be necessary, whether it's paving or lighting? And I would imagine there's probably, we think it's that easy, but I'm sure there are probably permits, environmental permits and things like that that you have to also look at. So I don't think it's that easy. Am I right?
Nothing seems to be easy.
Right. But thank you so much, Phil, for putting this on for me. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I agree with the mayor that we've got to figure out how to regionally work on the river path. The reason I wanted to bring up the Truckee River Shared Use Path and the Broadhead Park in the our TIP was because I wanted to point out that there have been efforts by RTC to invest, and so how did those, I know that Broadhead was a partnership and a grant that we gave, but the Truckee River Shared Use Path, how did that happen, and how can we further those kind of commitments? And I know that the flood project's looking very closely at this. Washoe County has partnered with the city of Reno on a study of the river, and I think it's figuring out how to make sure that RTC is also at the table for whatever we can do to support this effort as well. Is that what you're looking for, Madam Mayor? Yeah. So I'm in support of that, however we can collaborate.
I think, it's got to be flood project, RSCVA, all different jurisdictions. We've got to reach out to the tribe. Everyone has to do this together. I think one of the things that would be helpful is creating a board that we all sit on so that there is constant conversation and everyone knows what's happening. I also think, now more than ever, I really feel strongly about having dedicated river rangers along the river. It's not safe to sleep or camp, and people need to be able to enjoy the river like we did when we were growing up. And, it's not, a lot of people say, I don't want to go down there. That's problematic. So I do think, And I'm happy to move that forward over at the city to create some sort of board, but I think it's time that we actually say, how are we going to invest in this asset? For far too long, I mean, it's amazing to me that there is not a funding source for this incredible asset. I mean, it's, so many people say to me that have just been to Reno, like, oh my God, I'd die to have that river in my city, right? So we need to start acting like it, and truly, it's not what you say, it's what you do, so.
Mr. Reese?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. For my part, I think when I contemplate the importance of the river as a place of multimodal transportation, that is the hat I wear here in this building. So I think about the river and the reasons why people are engaging along it. And yes, some of it is recreational, but also some of it is moving people to and from a place. And so we have to conceptualize more broadly the role that we have here at the RTC. It cannot just be about, roads that buses and cars drive on. It includes the places where people bike, where they might walk. People are living in our urban core more than they have historically. And so if a person desires to go from their home in downtown Reno to their job in the South Meadows, they may access parts of that along this multimodal transportation corridor. And the connectivity to it is really what drives the conversation. I want us at the RTC to be building the community we want to see 30 years in the future, not living 30 years in the past where the car was the king, and then our decisions are all contemplated by cars. People are choosing other ways to get around, whether that's bikes or scooters, rollerblades, however they do it. The river is a key component of those micromodal paths. I think if we're talking about trails, trails that you see in nature, that's one thing. But we're really talking about places that are to be improved and do have access off of our roadways. And so I hope that the members of this body will see the sort of hopefulness that we have at the City of Reno and share in the responsibility of making sure that it is a focus of our community. We all have reasons to continue to preserve and promote and protect the river. It is so important. And so I think this particular agenda item highlights, I think, the importance of that to Madam Mayor, but to all of us. I mean, I think with everybody on this body has reasons that the river is important, not only to them personally, but also to our region writ large.
Mr. Chair, I echo the sentiments of my colleagues here about the importance of having continuity between the local jurisdictions. I represent District 3 at the county. It goes from Keystone all the way over to East McCarran and Sparks. Sun Valley all the way down to Wooster, and I think my district particularly is impacted by the decisions our body makes and the discussions we choose to have or choose not to have. And so the continuity piece is very important to me. Having a uniform vision is key, I think, in any well-planned project or design, but for me, more importantly, is having equitable access. And so what I'd like to avoid is having this piecemeal approach to the Truckee River corridor, where you can feel when you're in Reno, and you can feel when you're in Sparks, where you can feel when you're along certain sections. And it's not only about connectivity, but it's also about the aesthetics of it. We want our constituents to feel valued. And I know I represent some neighborhoods in different parts of Washoe County where they interpret the lack of infrastructure, or the lack of aesthetics, or the lack of beautification efforts as them being less than. And so whatever we decide to do, whatever the delivery method for this, I'm so new that I wouldn't even know the appropriate venue to have these kinds of conversations, but I do appreciate being able to talk about the river. It's the first time I've ever seen it come up or had a discussion or had a chance to discuss it and hear ideas from my colleagues, so I appreciate that.
The equality issue, right? It's an equality issue. Great, thanks for bringing it up. So I guess moving forward, what does this look like, Bill, in the sense of?
Let me make a comment first.
Okay, go ahead.
There needs to be a plan, number one. What does it look like? How wide is the path? How many streetlights do you have? How much is it going to cost? What's the budget? So that you can come up with a plan. I'm 100% in favor of what you're talking about. And it doesn't all fall here. It falls in many different regional boards. And you know that I've been talking about a lands bill so we can get tilt-up concrete off of the river so Sparks can enjoy the river. It's a huge asset that everyone I talk to in the country, if they had a river running through their city, they would be ecstatic. And we see some of the back east cities, you know, Three River Stadium just pops to my mind where that's become a huge asset for that community. Our Truckee River is a huge asset for us we're not taking advantage of. I'm 100% behind this, but I think we have to start with, what does it look like? Where does it start? Where does it stop? How do we connect Reno and Sparks and Washoe County, and maybe even Story County for that matter? We look at down the road, maybe you ride your bicycle out to your job at Tesla. I mean, that
Why
kind of
not?
stuff is cool stuff, which goes hand in hand with the Tahoe Pyramid Trail, which all is this fits together. Happened to be at KTMB last night, standing behind the Tahoe Pyramid Trail guys, and they're just excited that things are moving for them, and they're moving along with this trail and filling in some gaps. So they got to be a big part of this. So this is a huge community effort, but I think it all starts with a drawing that says this is what it looks like,
Yeah.
and this is how much it's going to cost.
That's why I do think we have to form a Truckee River Initiative Board that everyone sits on, so everyone's on the same page. And what does that look like? What's the commitment from everyone? Not just this board. I think you make
Not that I need
great
another board to
arguments.
sit on.
I know, right? None of us
But-
do, but I'm afraid if we don't, then
It's a
it won't
worthy-
continue
it's a
to move
worthy cause.
forward. Because everyone's been talking about it, but it's now time to move forward. So I think, knowing what this body wants to engage in, that's really helpful if you feel like that this is the time to start to put those pieces together. And this is obviously very premature, but I think we have to go to each board that we sit on and say, what is your interest? Are we all ready to commit? Are we all ready to invest in this asset? So
Well,
that's what I wanted to
Remember what
gauge.
came out of the Community Homeless Advisory Board, a new homeless shelter, and a community-wide
Yeah.
engagement. That's what we need to get back to. So, Madam Mayor, call on me, I'll be on your board.
Thank you. Well, or just other great champions, then you don't have to serve. All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Let's move to, you want to talk?
Well, only to make sure we don't exit this item with unclear expectations. Because we certainly, as an organization, don't want to fail our board and what you're expecting us to do. I do know that there is a consultant either being selected or at least being looked for on behalf of City of Reno and Washoe County to delve into this issue. Right now, our perspective at RTC is we would be a participant.
Yes, it's-
So we're not a lead, we're participating, we're going to be participating from just like our title says, the Regional Transportation Network. If there was a greater expectation, that would be good for us to know, but at least for now, that's how we're looking at it. I think it's pretty clear from all of what all of you've said is you sit in many boards for many different purposes. I think part of the reason we've been so successful is we stay focused on a couple of things. But certainly this board, if that's a direction for the transportation element that you want us to be more engaged, we would just want to know that that's where you want to spend our time and effort. So right now, we would be participants, but not a lead. And so I'm going to come out from this unless you tell me otherwise. We're participating, but it's not
I
on our
think
plate
you're
to
right.
solve this issue.
And we're investing about $3 million to start to kick this off and start to put it all together. So I think you're right. All I would ask is that you participate, obviously you're going to do that, but particularly pay attention that I do believe that this board will come back, whether it's budget or whenever that study is done, and we'll have a better idea of what that looks like. I would just say, I do think that this board would like to particularly focus on that aspect. I think Councilman Reese made very, very good points, right? So I think we do have a role in it, but I don't think you are the lead. So maybe that makes everyone feel a little better.
Okay, any more? Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think, to the mayor's point, what we're doing with Keystone, for example, the Keystone Bridge, there's potential for RTC to collaborate with the flood project. Probably in the first time, at least in the time I've been in office, that I've seen these two regional boards, work together on a project. And so I think, getting out of the RTC does this and flood does this and Washoe does this, and say, we're all the things that, pull on one string and all of us are affected. So ensuring that we're working together and lessen, and ensure that we see, like, if RTC takes place, partnerships in the study, that when there's a role for us to play, we step up and play it, instead of saying, well, I think that's a parks path, and find a way that we can support these projects in the same way we have the shared use path in Broadhead Park, and thinking kind of how we play a role with those essential transportation elements that are outside of just a street. But thank you. Great discussion.
All right.
Okay, so you want me to accept? I don't know, does that help you give a motion?
Report?
Yeah,
Do we need an action?
probably not.
I'm going to ask the lawyer.
I'm thinking, well,
There's no action required, but,
Okay.
and so is it at the discretion of the board.
I think we're clear on what the role of the RTC is, and I think that's what staff needs more than anything. Okay, thank you. 6.2, discuss the history and future of direction of public transit in relation to the Lake Tahoe as requested by Mayor Sheevy, and provide input and direction to the executive director.
all right. Thank you so much. So just obviously, as the region has gotten much more popular, people have asked me why we don't have dedicated transit up to Lake Tahoe and what that looks like. Alexis, you probably know better than I would, what's happening up there and how both sort of come together. And I don't know, Bill, have we ever played a role with our partners up there? Like, I don't know, like, are we just strictly down here, or is there some way to collaborate? What does that look like? And also, I would imagine that we've done surveys or studies or something to gauge the interest, if something like that is possible, or what does that even look like? It's just, most cities that are very tourist-centric, and especially that have sort of that, I guess, attraction, I don't know if you want to call it attraction, typically have transit to those destinations. So I was kind of curious, obviously, as we look to be more sustainable, be more environmental, obviously, shared transportation is, I think the most attractive. But, I don't think, again, it's easier said than done. So kind of maybe give us a background of what something like that would look like, or how do we, I study that? What does that look like?
Probably history.
If I can, in response to that, I'll do two things. One of them is point the board to one of the goals that we put in for 2024 in our RTC goals, and read it verbatim so you understand at least what we see as your staff. We have a goal to explore transportation solutions to reduce vehicle miles traveled in the Washoe County, Tahoe area. So obviously that's very broad, but at least putting in our goals means it's going to be something we're going to be spending time on this year to try to refine and turn into what does that mean? Like, is it a specific action, a specific effort we're going to fund, et cetera? But I'd also like, and it's not done in a way to excuse it or to say it's not important, but give the board collectively and the public who's listening a little history on what we have done. Because what we probably don't want to do is keep trying the same things if they're not working. But
Right.
So I'm going to ask Jim Gee, if he wouldn't mind coming up and giving a little history to the board on.
Okay, good.
Because this is not a new issue, as you can imagine. And Jim, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Members of the commission, good morning.
Good morning.
For the record, my name is Jim Gee. I'm the Service Plan and Innovation Manager for RTC. In terms of history of our service to Tahoe, first a tip, several years ago, we had a traditional fixed route bus service that connected the summit up to Incline Village in Sand Harbor. That service lasted about 2 months before it was canceled. And it was canceled for 3 reasons. One was poor ridership. Secondly, was poor efficiency in that it's a long stretch of road with really limited pickup and drop-offs. And third, and much more significantly, safety issues. Your 40-foot transit bus that you see going up and down city streets were simply not made to go up and down Mount Rose Highway. And so we had a lot of safety issues and a lot of concerns specifically about the braking systems and making sure that our vehicles were safe going up there. As a follow-up to that, in 2021, we created a FlexRide type of service to serve the Tahoe region. That service was using a smaller vehicle, using a more on-demand type of scheduling system where folks had to schedule their ride. That service lasted most of the summer of 2021, but again, similar to the previous attempt, had very poor ridership, about 300 trips for the entire summer. What we found was it was not families we were taking, but a lot of onesie and two passenger trips, so very inefficient in that way. And we also found, surprisingly, that the ridership was not centered on the weekends. It was actually a lot of weekday ridership, which was taking our drivers away from Access and FlexRide at a time when we had a significant driver shortage, and that created a lot of operational issues for us. I will say one success we've had with Tahoe is in our van pool program. We started van pooling to the Tahoe region in 2022. We now have 8 to 10 vehicles going up there, 1,500 passengers a month now taking advantage of van pool, and so that piece has been much more successful than our previous efforts. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Mayor Sheevy, for bringing this up, because this is something I'm working on as chair of the Tahoe Transportation District to try to see how we can better connect the region with transit. And RTC has been a supporter in the past. I will give RTC some big credit. Before I even got on this board approved funding for a mobility hub in Incline Village. We're working through that public process, so that's amazing. And I think it's a chicken or egg situation on transit, because it is so easy to load up your car and just go up to Lake Tahoe. You don't know where you're going to park. You don't know where you're going to go once you get up there. But changing that behavior. When I've spoken to Bill and the team, it's like, do we carrot or stick this? And is it a base and user fee if you use your vehicle? And what does that look like? That we can't do tolls per NRS right now. So there's a lot of state law that would need to be worked out to incentivize public transit. But I'm with the mayor. We've got to figure this out. And so one thought is, okay, if we are going to eventually do transit for whatever reason, we're going to get a lot of people to take transit out of Reno to Tahoe. How are we going to do the park and ride? And that's why I was curious about our RTC park and ride program through the RTIP. And, maybe there's a way to study a park and ride, a purchase of property, lease of property, whatever that looks like, to at least start that planning process of what that could look like, to at least have the infrastructure in place once we can incentivize the bus, people taking the bus, because I want to make sure that that people, when we put the service into place, that people are going to take it. That's my concern, and I don't know how we get them there unless we incentivize it, free buses, and there's somewhat of a stick of you have to pay per vehicle whatever the cost is, and that will take time too. But I've already been pushing that as well, and have spoken to the governor's office about that. It's not a very popular concept, let me tell you. So I don't know if there's any other creative solution that you, Jim, would be able to, tell us on how to incentivize ridership on that. It's
difficult because right now there's a disincentive in that if we take them up to Incline, for them to spend a weekend and want to move around the community, they have to switch vehicles to a different transit system. And to move your luggage, your coolers, your backpacks, whatever, that disincentive itself is enough to have folks just say, well, I'd rather just drive. It's, we have in the past talked about alternative ways up to the Tahoe area. Maybe it's through trucking instead, where we can connect with TART. Maybe instead it's from the south, which obviously add a lot of miles and time. But in terms of, safety and the road itself, it may be a better fit for us geographically and also would add more miles and more opportunities for folks to enjoy Tahoe. I think it does deserve some study and some deep thought about it.
I totally agree with that. Sorry, Chair, to just jump in. Just,
It's a free-for-all here.
I guess maybe I'm naive here because a lot of this, a lot of the comments that I received were from tourists. Do we know what the ridership looks like versus tourism versus local? Do we know by any chance on your
For our ridership,
what that kind of,
our ridership was really designed for Reno residents to travel to Tahoe. There are private companies that provide shuttle services from the airport, both to State Line and then also along the north side of the lake.
okay, good to know. But I think Alexis is right in the sense of figuring out that connectivity piece, because I think it's really critical, and we haven't done that yet. So I think to study it more would be a good idea, just so we have that information and the data. And also, we both sit on the tourism board, so we kind of need to connect over there too and figure out what that looks like when we talk about the ridership. Who is this for? Also, I would think, like you were saying, you said during the week was much more popular, which is really interesting. And that would tell me, obviously, if we're looking to promote transit up there, I think we're catering to different demographics probably and different users. So I think that's something maybe to look into that could help us kind of shape where we want to go with some of these initiatives.
Yeah, one thing I neglected to add, we do have a great working relationship with both TART and TDD. Those are the transportation providers in the region up there. Both of them provide service in different areas along the lake. TART especially has created a microtransit type of service in Incline Village. They actually have 3 different zones, which are partially funded by RTC. They are also struggling the same as us with the driver shortage, and so that has impacted their service quite a bit. For example, there's no direct connection between State Line and Sand Harbor, and so that's a big gap in that side of the lake.
Okay, good to know. All right, thank you.
Just out of curiosity, from my business time, I dealt with the TRPA up there. Does TRPA have anything to say in regards to transportation?
My sense is that TRPA is the planning side and TTD is more the operations, wheels on the street, so to
I
speak.
couldn't do anything without TRPA approval. I had to ask for where to go to lunch, They're pretty restrictive.
But, Mr. Chairman, I will say TRPA just applied for a federal grant to do, I don't know how the technical term, but essentially fees for folks to go through Emerald Bay and through that 28 corridor that is impacted by Sand Harbor to see if we can start that concept of a basin user fee in a small scale. I'm not sure where that grant is, but that would be something that TTD would eventually implement because TRPA is seeing the impact of vehicle miles traveled within the basin. They want to be a partner, and they're trying to plan and find some funding to support this. And I think that Santini Burton is another possibility through the lands bill that Harry Reid did in Southern Nevada. Every time land is disposed of, a portion of that money goes to the Forest Service, and figuring out how that Santini Burton Forest Service money, which there's quite a bit of money actually in that pot, can go to transit. And that's another thing that they're working on the federal level. So there are a lot of things in place, but figuring out how to connect the Reno side of it is missing. So that's why I really appreciate you bringing this up, Mayor Sheevy, because I love the idea of us figuring out a study for both park and ride and transit, and figuring out how we can better argue for transit, serve the right constituency for transit. So I will tell you, I'm trying to fund the shuttle that goes from the airport to Incline Village, because it's a $90 ride right now.
Yeah.
And it's too expensive. Who would pay $90 when you can rent a car? So I have been working to subsidize it. I've asked the airport authority to subsidize it. They said that they had restricted funding. I think I've asked RTC, and RTC said no too. So figuring out how we can fund and incentivize even those kind of things to kind of get tourists in the habit of not having a vehicle up there is another piece. But I agree with Jim that even the connectivity around the lake needs to be improved greatly in order for us to just say, leave your car in Reno because you may be stranded or only be able to go to Santa Harbor, and you may want to go to other places around the lake, which is something we're working on TTD. But again, it's time and money and a big project, so we've got to push uphill. But figuring it all out and being prepared when that time comes, that may be where that study comes in.
Definitely.
I just happened to be at the lake a couple weekends ago. It is not a fun drive.
No.
It just from North Lake to South Lake, it was an hour and 10 minutes. And a lot of that's right at Emerald Bay, and people walking down the middle of the road, cars parked into the travel lane. It's
Crazy.
a user fee would be a wonderful idea. All right, do we have any action on this one?
Mr. Chair, no action is required, but it's at the discretion of the board.
Okay, do you need any action?
Mr. Chair, can we ask for a study or for staff to bring back a component of what a study would look like and the cost of something like that, and the board can consider that for future approval?
Yeah, is that you want to make a motion?
So moved.
Okay, got a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Reports. RTC Director Bill Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple items for today in my report. The first one is I wanted to start with, even though it's a month late, acknowledging John Ponzo's 25th anniversary with RTC. 25 years is a long time in any organization, but I would say to all of you, because John's not normally, you may see him come here when our systems don't work, but like all of us who have technology systems, they're great until they're not. And I think we all take advantage of the fact when they're working well. Well, John's the mastermind behind all technology here at RTC, so we owe him a deep sense of gratitude for his 25 years, because he's really advanced this organization and done a lot to keep us in the forefront with technology. So I just wanted to say to John, on behalf of myself and the board, thank you for your 25 years of service. In addition, a little less, but equally as important group of people, Paul Nelson, Amanda Caligari, and Kim Deagle are all celebrating 1 year at RTC. All three of these people are newer employees, but significant contributors to the success of RTC. So I wanted to thank those three people specifically for sticking with us for 1 year and all you've done in that year. I'd like to thank the director, even though she's not here today, Larkin Thomason, and NDOT staff, which obviously are here, so I can thank you guys personally, for everything they've done in our highway system recently. Specifically, I wanted to point to their efforts in replacing the wrong-way driver systems between Keystone Avenue and the California state line. In specific, and I know the board's brought it up before, these improvements, which are in the works, will really help in areas like the Mogul area. And I just wanted to give a big thanks to NDOT for advancing that program, because I know it means a lot to this board and the people in the community to really proactively deal with the wrong-way driving situation, because it is such a dangerous and bad thing to happen when somebody's on that freeway going the wrong way. So thank you, NDOT. Just to highlight an upcoming event, which is, of course, very important to our community, particularly downtown Sparks. We have the Best in the West Nugget Rib Cook-Off starting later this month. RTC will provide a partnership with the Nugget. We're going to be providing free transportation to our Rapid Lincoln Line and Route 11 to Centennial Plaza. It'll run from Wednesday, August 30th through Monday, September 4th, all day. I wanted to talk also just to update the board on some activities. We do a lot of things, as you know, that don't necessarily come to the board's attention because we're performing the work that is expected of us. One of those I wanted to mention to the board is that we're moving forward, and I think at your last board meeting, you actually approved the funding for final design of the West 4th Street downtown project from Keystone to Evans. The plan that's being advanced will replace existing street lighting with new lighting using the neon line LED fixture. It'll also have ADA improvements, including intersection improvements and design of proposed bus rapid transit structures along that route. So I think that particular project is going to be impactful to the neon line district as well as the whole west side of downtown, as 4th Street is such a critical part of the transportation network. The RTC is teaming up with the Nevada Wolfpack for the upcoming football and basketball seasons. We will be advertising the Rapid Virginia Line and the Ed Pass program. The packages of advertising that will include digital ads for 5 minutes per game at Mackey Stadium and 2 minutes per game at Lawler Event Center for basketball games. We will have we will have a booth for outreach on the concourse for 2 football games and at all the basketball games. This agreement also includes social media advertising too. And just to stress, because sometimes people don't see the connection, the Ed Pass program has made a substantial success in getting college students, both TMCC and UNR, on the bus rather than driving cars, adding to traffic and safety issues. So we felt like that was a good forum to really get that program out there. And even though, as I understand it, in their orientation, they're informed about this program, it never hurts to remind people, particularly the students, that this is a program available to them. And every one of them that rides the bus is a success for us in terms of particularly the BRT line that serves directly the university. I wanted to now congratulate a couple of our partners and the running of the system, starting with Keolis. The Keolis Driver of the Month is Angela Bergay, and I hope I didn't get that. Did I slaughter that name? Mm-hmm. Good, okay. She has worked at RTC Ride as an operator since August of 23, so certainly a long-time driver for us. Angela's a very pleasant person, and she really loves her job. Her on-time performance was 98% in July. She works extremely hard to get her passengers to their destination safely and on time. And one thing I would stress about the on-time, which none of us think about, is it is a challenge for the drivers because the passengers expect to be on time, but they also expect a little bit of personalized service. And as the drivers, and I've heard this from many of them, they have stress, which is making sure that they show up on time because it's so important to the riders, and yet they have to deal with traffic, they have to deal with perhaps riders who aren't really moving as fast or as compliant. So it is a major thing to be 98% on time, and it really does reflect the skill and the quality of Angela as an employee and a driver in our community. Now, I'd also like to say from the MTM side of it, this month's the employee we want to recognize is Nancy Gray. Nancy's been an Access and FlexRide driver for more than 5 years. She's well loved by her passengers and co-workers. This year, she has provided more than 2,700 trips. And actually, this is a real exciting statistic. 369 passengers took the time to leave positive reviews about her service, which is amazing, as we all know in government. If you get 3, you're doing good, right? And obviously, this isn't a government, but it's a service that a lot of people see as a government service. So thank you, Nancy. Really appreciate it. outside of work, just to give you a little perspective on Nancy, she enjoys her 10 grandchildren, taking care of her chickens, her yard work, and swimming. So Nancy is the epitome of MTM's vision that every trip is important. And we know, particularly in the world of access, that having the drivers really care about their job, which they do, reflects in the experience with the passengers who use access. So thank you, Gio, and your team, and particularly thank Nancy. The last item I wanted to bring to the board's attention, because it is a really positive thing, is just to let you know in terms of our fixed route operations, particularly our bus rapid transit, that we've done an amazing job of rebuilding from the pandemic. We're almost going to cross the 5 million annual passengers line, which is significant because we lost at one point close to 60-some% of our ridership. So in great part, it has to do with the drivers, with the mechanics, with the schedulers, and also with the management at Keolis that have been able to get drivers back, get the system running. You know, we put out what our expectations are, we fund it, but at the end of the day, our partner, Keolis, has to perform. And I would say that's a direct indicator of success when we're almost at 5 million and we're up 37% year over year in ridership. So I wanted to make sure the board understood that all those indicators are a good sign for our public transit system. And with that, I will close my comments.
Okay, thank you. Paul Nelson, you got some for us?
Good morning. Paul Nelson, RTC Government Affairs Officer. Things are kind of quiet right now in Washington, and that's because the House and the Senate are on their August recess. They wrapped up their legislative business at the end of July, and they'll return back to Washington right around Labor Day. And when they do, they're going to have to try to pass this the budget for the federal government by past September 30th. And there's some skepticism that that's actually going to happen because we've seen this movie before. There's a big thought that what they'll have to do is pass a continuing resolution, kind of kick the can down the road and try to get this budget passed. Before they did go on their recess, both houses did pass their 12 appropriations bills out of their committees. The Senate spending levels follow what the spending caps passed were earlier this year, and the House is looking to actually cut some spending. We're not exactly sure all the cuts that they want to do. We're hoping that that really won't have much of an impact on the transportation system. The USDOT is accepting the SMART grant applications, and we're taking a look at some of our projects around town, seeing if there's a good fit to apply for one of those grants. These are really geared towards innovation and technology when it comes to our transportation system. And that's all I've got. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. I don't know why I drew a blank.
Good morning.
NDOT report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to give the report this month. The director sends her regards as she was pulled away to meet with our federal representatives about the Brightline project, but be sure to convey your thanks to her and the rest of our team. We appreciate that. First things first, our monthly safety update. The executive director and I are on the same page without actually connecting verbally, but I want to talk a little bit about what we've done on I-580 through the center of Reno. So NDOT and our contractor Q&D completed the fourth of 4 marathon weekends just in time for the Northern Nevada event season to begin. While the project still has single lane closures to complete the work, 4 lanes of new smooth pavement and fresh striping are in place and in use. We thank the public and our stakeholders for being patient and helping us save months of nightly lane closures and risk to our team members on the roadway. We hope everyone enjoys the new riding surface. Next, as we get back our students to school, the Safe Routes to School program has geared up to help safely move our youngest transportation users to and from. Since early 2023, the School District Police Department's Safe Routes to School coordinator, conducts regular school-based events to teach K through 8th grade students how to become more visible to motorists and how to follow safety precautions. NDOT's Safe Routes to School partnership mission is advancing safe walking and rolling to and from schools and in everyday life, and improving the health and well-being of all Nevadans to provide a safe and connected system for One Nevada. In addition to grant coordination to fund Safe Routes to School, NDOT uses our dynamic message boards to remind vehicle travelers that bike and pedestrian traffic is increasing. Next, a note responding to a question about the potential for wildlife crossings in the Verdi area. We know that wildlife crossings are one way we can help keep our roadways safe for drivers and Nevada's wildlife together. As we're aware, new funding from Assembly Bill 112 created an account to support wildlife crossings statewide. Funding will include such things as bridges, tunnels, and culverts to help reduce animal-vehicle crossing interactions and to reconnect fragmented natural habitat. An initial appropriation of $5 million in general fund money will help the state provide state matching funds for federal grant programs. In this particular area of I-80, we know there's a large amount of wildlife. Traditional crossings of a divided highway have a large footprint and require property outside of existing NDOT right-of-way. It would be challenging to install a typical overcrossing or undercrossing due to proposed developments and being surrounded by private lands. It's fortunate, though, that we do have several natural existing undercrossings in existence, also known as bridges I-80 over the Truckee River. So what we're doing right now, we're actually installing 8-foot tall wildlife fencing alongside I-80 from Mogul to Verdi to direct animals to the natural undercrossings and along the Truckee River. This will allow a reduction of animals crossing randomly across the interstate and interacting with our vehicles and our travelers. On Monday, the NDOT Transportation Board approved an award of contract 3988. For us, that contract is shown in green in the top left corner of the slide. This is a preservation project for 395 between Cold Springs up to Bordertown, up to state line. So approximately 4 miles of northbound and southbound 395 will be milled and overlaid with the new asphalt surface and other related activities for a preservation project. This project is estimated to take about 80 working days. It'll start soon and complete in the spring. For clarity, the North Valleys project we've been speaking of many times in recent history is shown in red at the bottom right side of the slide and extending down to Clearacre. This project has been advertised, bids have been received. We anticipate taking it to the Transportation Board for approval in September or October, most likely September. You can also see on the slide there's additional projects there. Mr. Dunn just mentioned earlier Phase 2, that would be in light green north of the red section, and also includes improvements to North Virginia coming up to 395 in that area for interest. For the Commission's information, as requested by the Governor's Office of Economic Development and Tesla, the department is beginning a feasibility study for a southern route to the Tahoe-Reno Industrial Center. In the very bottom left corner of the screen, the road shown in black is South Meadows Parkway. It has a bridge labeled on the end of it, as if you can see that on the slides or the handout. At the top right of the red dashed line is USA Parkway, at or about where the Tesla Gigafactory is located. The alignment shown here was completed at a conceptual level. This alignment and other alternatives will be developed as the study progresses. The scope of the study will include development of alternative concepts, starting the planning and environmental linkage process, which is something we do on occasion prior to the NEPA process, and also a benefit cost analysis and risk analysis will be performed. We anticipate the study to begin at the end of 2023 with an approximate 18-month duration. And that completes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the commission? Okay, thanks, Darren.
Thank you.
Commissioner updates, announcements, updates, anything?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can we go back, because that update just kind of ran through each one, and I didn't want to interrupt anyone.
We can go
But
back.
I do want to go back to employee appreciation. Am I right that we do 12, I would think, from Keolis and MTM, just 12 a year, or is that once a month, right? Once a month.
I'll ask either Jen or Phil or Gio, maybe they come up once per month?
Well, that's the driver. We also do our maintenance tax, and then we do our utility.
Bill, come up here for
So how many do,
record.
how many people do we recognize in the month?
Gotta get you on the record here.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Phil Pumphrey, General Manager of Keolis. We do 3 a month. We do a driver, we do a maintenance tech, and we do utility workers.
Okay, that's awesome. I would like to see, and maybe this is something the board has to agree on, and I don't know if we even, I mean, with the funding side of things, what exactly do we do for them besides just recognize them here?
They get a $250 bonus, each one.
They get, okay,
Yeah. And then we have other recognition programs. We give out pins and gift cards for customer accommodations when they get a compliment from a customer. We've done others for, we've given out some gift cards for on-time performance and for wearing the right uniform, for safe acts, and those are kind of once in
I
a
just
while.
want to make sure they're significant enough to where they know that we appreciate them. That was one of the things when we were giving the gift cards here, like I didn't feel like, that didn't really express. I know that, they have very busy lives, so they don't come here. So I want to make sure they don't come here, but they know that we appreciate them. Because, it's more important that they get, take care of their families and get to work. But I want to make sure that we are doing something very special for them because they are the front door of what we do. And the first interaction is going to be with our drivers. And so I think it's really important that we show how much we do appreciate them, because I think, I kind of slammed, we were looking at like gift cards for sandwiches, and I'm like, no, then we've got to do something much more than that. So they get $250
Yes, ma'am, that's
each
correct.
person? Yeah?
Each one of the winners for the month.
Okay, all right. Does that come from RTC or Keolis?
Keolis.
Keolis? Okay. All right, well, I would love to see it if RTC would at least add another $100 to that.
So not to negate the positive of what you're saying, but we have to be careful in
About,
terms of what RTC does because they're not our employees.
okay,
We have some ability in a very general sense, and maybe Adam can share with all the board the limitations on what we can actually do. But we can do things to show appreciation.
okay, that
which
would be
I will
great.
look
Let's
at for
figure
the
out.
board and figure out
Perfect.
how to do that, but we can't
I would love that.
directly- they're
Do
not our
that, okay.
employees.
If we can somehow figure out a way to, on our side, to show that. So it also kind of adds to what Keolis is doing, I think would be a nice addition, so.
We'd be happy to talk with
But
RTC.
tell them thank you and congratulations. They sound like incredible team members.
They are. Thank you.
Good job.
Go ahead.
Great point, Mayor Sheevy, and looking forward to that item.
Bill anymore?
Oh, no, I do not.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Phil.
thank you. I just wanted to applaud the city of Reno for our PD being out in force in the school zone areas this week.
We've been trying hard.
Amazing work, and I don't know, I haven't been in the city of Sparks, and perhaps y'all are doing it as well.
For all.
But I'm just really impressed because people have had to adjust since the summertime, and
Totally forget.
Yeah, they do, and I was watching people getting pulled over and feeling very happy, and so thank you. I just want to commend
No, thank you for recognizing them, and I will make sure that they receive your sentiments because we really appreciate that. everything we do is wrong, right? It just seems like it. That's what I see all the time. So it's always nice to be recognized, and they will definitely value that. So thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Okay. Well, let's move back to public comment. Anyone in the public wishing to make a comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll call that. We'll move on to item 10, adjournment. Thank you.
Yeah.
Look at that.